Okay, so like I said, I wanted to talk about body position today, but I didn't think I was going to do that good of a job of it in my office at the house. So I came over here to the shop into one of our welding booths, and we'll talk briefly about how important body position is. But I thought real quick before we get into it, since we're about to start back up in the shop again like normal, I would talk a little bit about the safety brief we would usually do on our way in here, right? Normally it takes a little while for everyone to show up from the different schools. We kind of trickle in. As soon as mostly everybody's here, we start our safety brief. I'll hand it out. I usually do them at first, and then once you guys get comfortable with them, I'll start handing it out, and one of you guys will fill out our safety brief right here. Right? It's just a one-page kind of summary of what's going to go on in the shop that day, what the hazardous materials are. Are there any chemicals or fuels or anything else that could be flammable or dangerous in some way that would be listed down. Work scope, that means what are we going to do today, right? Today we're going to weld and cut. Describe the work area hazards, and I would list all the hazards in the work area, either because of the environment, because of the shop, or because of the activities that are going to go on in the shop. Then you describe controls or equipment implemented to correct the hazardous or unsafe conditions. So that's where we would implement all our safety disciplines that we've talked about, like wearing our PPE, stop, think, act, review, remember, STAR. Take a minute. Remember, you take the minute when you get to your workstation. I put in there proper lifting techniques, stuff like that. Um, it asks what inspections are going to be performed. Right? We're going to inspect all our equipment, our welder, our torch, our grinders. Is there a change in job scope from the previous meeting? And I usually put no if we did this yesterday. And then there's a section for additional safety topics, suggestions, right? And you guys can add on that. And then everyone signs at the bottom, right? And it's just by signing below, I acknowledge that I am fit for duty and I agree to follow all the safety procedures, right? That's just saying like, hey, I'm all here, I'm paying attention, I'm not sick or otherwise impaired, and I can work safely in the shop, and I will do that on purpose, right? I'm going to work safely on purpose. And this is a daily site safety meeting from the job that I was at before here, right? This is not something fake. It still even has the name of the company on the bottom. It was straight out of our safety manual, right? And that's what we did every day before we got started. And I kept that on there just so you guys can see that I didn't make it up, right? That's a real thing from a job site. So then we would come into the shop. Usually we would do this in the classroom, and then we'd walk over when we're done. This year we'll probably do it in here in the shop. You would go over to the locker room, get dressed out, and then come to your workstation. You already know what to do, right? I've already given the instructions either during or right before the safety brief. You'd have your kind of basic PPE on, like what I have on now, the glasses, gloves. And then you would take a minute when you get to your welding booth. So this is my group's welding booth. I'm going to check it out. Everything's all right. I'm going to inspect my machine. Maybe after the take a minute, that can be separate. But the take a minute, remember, it's just kind of the basics, right? Is there any flammables? Do I have all my stuff or all the tools here? Everything the way it's supposed to be. Is the torch off the way it's supposed to be because we're not using it right now? Anything else, right? Just that. I mean, that wasn't 30 seconds that I took doing that. And then I could spend the rest of the time taking a good look at my welding machine, make sure it's all connected. I'll probably flip it on and make sure that the settings are, it's the right polarity, all that stuff. Make sure I have rods, things like that. And again, that doesn't take very long, right? I've already kind of inspected the work area for any hazards or anything that's going to get in my way or slow my work down, right? It's not just about safety. So then I would get to work, right? And my work right now is going to be showing you guys about body position. So we've covered these more than five sometimes. We talk about other ones also, but we talked about factors this week and the past week that contribute to a successful weld, right? Our travel angle, our work angle, right? Our travel speed, and our arc length, right? That we talked about yesterday. So all those together make a good weld, but it's going to be hard to achieve any one of those if you don't have good body position, right? So body position is kind of the basis for making your life easier when you're welding, right? And the main reason is motion. Right? You're going to be shaking a lot, right? So maybe you have the perfect travel angle, but since you're shaking, it's going to be changing all the time. Maybe you got that arc length dialed in for about a second, but then you take another breath and now you moved again and you're up and down, shaking, shaking. Some people are already steady, just naturally, just depending on how they're built or how their muscle structure is, bone structure, height, weight. Maybe that this work table is the exact height, perfect for them, but that's not going to be the case for everyone. So to try to weld just freehand, obviously never sitting down, right? But I'm sitting down just so I can fit in the camera shot here. But I'll stand up in a second just to show position. And also, my machine's off, right? So I can do this. I can put my rod in here and double check that it's off and nothing. You should never do this. I'm guilty of it too. I'll put the rod in, get ready to weld, and then I start talking, and I talk with my hands. So I'm doing this. That's not safe. Take the rod out if you're not ready to weld. If you're ready to weld, you put it in. But since it's just for demonstration purposes, you put the rod in, the rod holder or the electrode holder. Anyway, just maybe you can try real hard to stay still, just freehanding it like this. And there is going to be times where you have to weld just freehand. But even just instinctually, I'm putting my arm up against my body, right, to keep it still. And if you look closely at the point of my rod, maybe another time I'll zoom in, but it's shaking. It's moving all over the place if I'm looking. There's a little bead here, and I'm trying to hold it right over. And I'm doing an okay job, but I have a lot of practice, right? And I'm still not perfectly still, and that's okay because I'm alive, right? I'm breathing, my heart's beating, right? That's motion. Whether you realize it or not, your body's moving, right? Your muscles in your back are, those little fine twitch muscles are all twitching and contracting to keep you upright. Right? If you think about when you were learning how to ride your bike for the first time without the training wheels, right? You're all over the place, and it took a lot of effort to keep you upright. The same for just standing, right? There's a lot going on, but since you're used to it, you don't realize all the muscles that are working. Or hurt your back one time, and you'll realize real quick that how much of your muscles are involved, especially in your back, just to keep you standing straight up and not falling over, right? To keep your balance. So all those things are working and moving all at the same time, and it's going to be almost impossible to be perfectly still without help. Okay, but it's possible. I'll show you in just a second. So I'll stand up because I'm going to be kind of hunched over anyway, and I'll be in the frame. So what I like to tell people is to think of ladder safety when we're welding, right? And in ladder safety, and in climbing stairs and stuff, they teach in the safety courses to always have 3 points of contact, right? So that you don't fall off the ladder or whatever the stairs you're climbing. And that means you got to have your 2 feet on the ladder and one hand at least, right? The other hand can move up to the next rung, and then you pick. At some point, you have 2 hands and 1 foot, and then you alternate that, right? And you're climbing up the ladder. Same thing for welding, right? You got to have. I like to say 3 points of contact, but really it's 2, right? You got your contact with your rod, right? Your hand. You got to hold it somehow, right? And then you need another one touching the holder itself, or your hand or your arm somehow. And then I like to say the third one needs to be on the table or the workpiece, something. You need to connect yourself to the work, or some other structure that's not moving, right? To kind of to zero everything out. Remember I told you I was putting my arm against my body. That was kind of my second point of contact, and then I could do this. That would be even more points of contact. The more the better. The more still and stable you can brace yourself, the better, right? So this is kind of my go-to position right here when I'm doing a horizontal weld. If I was welding something right here, grab a scrap piece and put it there. Say I was going to make this weld. There's a pretty terrible weld on there from somebody practicing. This is a position I would get right here, right? I just kind of naturally go into it without even thinking, just from repetition, and you will too. You'll find yours. What I do is not necessarily going to work for everybody, because let me check something real quick. Yeah. Because everybody's a different size and shape, right? I'm a little shorter, so maybe this might not work for you, and we'll find something that works just for you. And then different welds require different positions, so different body position. So this is what I would normally do. It depends on the cable of the machine that I'm using, whether I hold it or not. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'll do this just to get that extra loop out of the way, but some have thicker cables, and I'll hold those because they really will move your hand if they move around. If I touch it with my leg, it's going to move the electrode holder. So I can either hold it or not, but definitely I want to touch my other hand in some way. There's various ways to do it, even as easy as just putting the other hand on it, right? Is helpful. And then I put that arm on the table. I've done this before. You think kind of like pool. One method also is to grab your thumb with your other hand, right, and then put that on the table, so you're holding the rod holder like this. There's lots of things to do. Some people do this like this. Some people two-hand it, but still, that you want to have some connection to the table because that's not moving. So even something little as just touching your thumb works pretty well. You might see me actually do this well just because I'm very used to it freehand, but I'll be leaning definitely hard on the table. My weight is not going to be being kept up by my back. It's going to be being kept up by the table itself, because I'm putting a lot of weight on my elbow here, and I'm leaning down. Like I said, even automatically, by habit, I tend to want to put a finger or something to touch my other hand, right? This weld, this 2F D9 weld, it takes a lot of motion. You need to be kind of free to move. So that's why sometimes I'll take the hand off, because you got to go all the way across this weld. And I'm trying to find this fat rod. See, there's one in here. We cleaned it out pretty well, but by the end, your rod's going to be pretty short, right? This is not even a new rod, but by the end, it's going to be even shorter than this. So you do need to have you need to be able to move freely, because you're going to be feeding the rod in as you move along, and you're going to be going left to right, right? So that's another thing. You can plant yourself really well and be nice and grounded, but if you're too grounded, you can't move with your weld. And what a lot of people do is they roll their wrist to make it to the end. I'll show you with the longer rod. It looks a little better. Oh, my camera's falling down. See if I can get the camera to stay. Okay. See, that'll stay there. Okay, so Yeah, they'll roll their wrist to get around, and they'll go like that to get to the end. And I'll show you this way. So here's my correct travel angle, right, welding, and to get to the end, they'll just roll the wrist to make it. And now my travel angle is totally different, right? So that's not good. So usually these tables are pretty smooth. They're kind of got a little rust covering on them now because of the dust that was sitting on them, but that'll go away after we start welding a little more. And this position right here, I can kind of move my whole hand, but there are times where you can be able to slide your elbow with it. That's usually the best thing. You want to, once you start welding, you want your rod holder, your wrist, and this arm all to be one unit, right? Not flexible, not rotating or anything, just stuck in place, like kind of like a robot arm. There's no flexibility. You want that to stay the way it is when you start. That way you keep your work angle the same, keep your travel angle the same, right? Maybe even your arc length is going to be affected by that. But consistency is the main idea here, right? There's already enough factors you got to get right? You don't need to be worrying about your shaky self, right? So you want to take that variable out of the equation there. So like I said, 2 or 3 points of contact, right, as much as possible. In this position, like I said, it would be like this. There, we do weld overhead, where you would lean. I lean on something and then put my hand on that. There's lots of different ways. There's overhead welding where we do kind of the same thing. Put my hand up on top of something. Sometimes I'll just lean, lay my hand over top of something. But the same concept applies where I want my rod holder in my hand, something else holding that hand or arm, and then that connected to something stable, something that doesn't move. And you got to watch out what you pick, because sometimes you might pick some kind of a support or something, and then someone down the aisle is banging on something or working on something else, or they start using an impact wrench or something to bolt something together, and now that support starts to vibrate or something, and you're feeling that. So and you don't really want to stop mid-weld. So pick your support wisely and make sure it's not going to move on you. And that I tell people that is a huge part of welding, body position, because like I said, you can have all those other things correct, all the other factors, but if your body position is working against you, they're probably going to change. You're probably going to mess up at some point, right? Your body position is going to hurt you if you're not taking care of those points of contact. A lot of people want to do this. They want to weld sitting down, and we have stools because there are certain things that we do sitting down, like when we oxyacetylene weld or when we TIG weld. But those are generally welding processes that don't make a lot of splatter. So yeah, this is a real stable position, right? Kind of the same thing where you're shedding your weight. You're taking weight off your feet and your back and putting it on the table or a chair or whatever. But processes of welding that splatter a lot, like MIG and stick, you don't want that landing on a flat surface that's not a table or a floor, right? Because that's going to want to eat through your pants. It's going to be a bad day, right? You don't want stuff falling into your lap. Even the workpiece sometimes will fall off. Sometimes you'll stick the rod and you'll kind of panic and jerk the electrode holder back, and here comes your piece with it, and then it breaks off and falls in your lap, and it's 1700 degrees. That's pretty bad, right? It falls on your, it could hit open skin. Either way, it's going to be a bad day. So we always weld standing up, right? And I've taken these out of the shop before because people can't withstand the urge to weld sitting down. I don't know why. I mean, it's actually better to weld standing up, stick welding. But yeah, don't be that lazy that you're going to put your body at risk, right, of hot falling particles and hot pieces. And that would never be allowed on the job site. Never. You're not going to go outside and see, go on a pipeline job and see a guy sitting down on a chair welding. No, that's not going to happen. you know, you gotta curb your laziness at some point. I know we get tired, and or maybe we're getting really used to sitting down right now because of the learning situation, but we gotta make sure we think of safety too, and just how it looks sometimes, and that's gonna look bad on you if you're always having to sit down on a job site. Uh, so keep that in mind. So that's where we'll stop today with body position. And just to recap real quick again, right? 2 to 3 points of contact or more. Connect yourself to something stable and take off as much weight from your body as possible, either by leaning, by sitting, by kneeling, whatever you have to do, so that you're not supporting your entire weight when you're welding. Oh, and one last thing, kind of a old school tip before let you go, before we stop talking about this. And I've never read it in a book. A lot of this stuff, it's not in the chapter. They kind of leave it to you to figure it out. But old school tip for cutting and welding or anything where you have to be still is to hold your breath. Or I guess to me, it makes more sense by saying, don't breathe. And it sounds funny. You say, what? And trust me, it works. It works for me. I guess I'm a heavy breather, and the second I stop breathing, I get a lot more still. Probably I'm twice as still as when I'm not breathing as when I am. And I don't realize I do it. Probably that's why I forgot to mention it earlier, because I've always done it, and that's like an old school welder tip that old guy will tell you, because it works. And like I said, there's a lot of factors going on. A lot of movement happening because of your body, but if we can take that one out, that'll help you out. And so that's what I do. You'll hear me talk sometimes when I'm trying to show you things. I'll talk while I'm welding, and that'll kind of make me a little shakier. But when I'm just welding to show you something, I'm not talking. I'm not breathing either. I'm not really holding my breath. Like, I don't mean like take a breath in and puff up your cheeks like you're gonna jump off the diving board at the swimming pool. I just mean stop breathing, just for a little while. And really, it's not that long. You're not going to weld for longer than you can hold your breath. I know that for sure. So try that out when we get started, and I definitely guarantee you it'll make a difference. So we'll stop the recording there.